my therapist is the one that literally put me on a path to look, towards these sorts of things that one would deem spiritual. It's beautiful.
In a grounded way that doesn't have you losing reality or losing connection to your life and your stability. Oh my God, you can do it both ways, guys.
I'm chatting and chilling with Christy from Transmuting Butterfly, one of my favorite astrologers who has not only read my chart but taught me a lot. Please say hello, Christy.
Hi guys, how are you?
Just so happy to be here. It is a full moon right now. Mercury just went direct.
Yeah, and Jupiter.
Yes, which there's some things I wanted to talk about with that, but I did want to give the audience an opportunity to know who I was talking with. You've been on the podcast before. We've had a lot of amazing conversations about a lot of different things. So I know this won't be any different, but just wanted to ask you to let people know what you do as far as astrology and your readings, just so they're aware of this right away.
Awesome. Well, again, my name is Christy, the Transmuting Butterfly, and I'm here to help you transmute darkness into light. And with that, I love helping people through astrology, through tarot, through chatting, through laughing, just to learn how to take the pain, take the shit, take the darkness, work it, make it into gold. So, and something that will light the way in your life. So that's what I'm all about. You can contact me on Instagram, Destino Divina. We'll spell it because that's Spanish.
I will put that up there. Yes.
Yeah. And I do readings online, in person here in Miami, Florida. And I meet with Janae on her podcast, and we have fun.
Yes, definitely so, because it's a popular thing as astrology has been over the past couple of years, and as it continues an uptick in popularity, I really do appreciate other astrologers who I can seek readings from. Some astrologers, or some people in general, they think it's strange. They're like, you're an astrologer, why do you still get readings? Well,
we're still human.
We are. And honestly, sometimes I feel biased in my own opinion about my own situations. So I really think it's important, no matter how much experience you have astrologically, to be able to bounce things off of another well-learned and well-knowledgeable, person. Because how else are we going to deal with certain things? Like, this full moon is square Pluto.
Yeah, and also the sun is still playing with Mars in Libra, so definitely when we have Pluto and Mars, things are gonna be lit. But I did want to say, kind of to backtrack a bit onto, how you being spiritual, you having your shit together and guiding others. How are you? Why are you still going out and getting help? Why are you? Well, because we are our own blind spot, and nobody's immune from that.
Yes.
That's the part where that's the humanity part. And if you have rose-colored glasses on, and that's all you've seen your whole life, well, someone's gonna be able to see those glasses on you and be like, yeah, let's take those off. Look at this. Because if you're so used to it, you're not going to think there's something more or there's a different way of seeing it. And not to get too deep, but, if you think about...
Get deep, girl. Get deep.
Scorpio life. Fractals are the same pattern, but repeated in different facets. And it's like, we are all a facet of this life, of this universe. And the way you see it not someone else is going to see it exactly that same way. And
Right.
so when here we are as spiritual people trying to connect, trying to help one another, that's what the community is about. And
Yes.
we're not supposed to, I mean, yes, the experience is as an individual. Like, no one can live your life for you. But when you're connected to that whole community, to that whole web of life on Earth, then you have access to different perspectives and different facets, and the truth is multifaceted. And we can go down that rabbit hole, but that's pretty much it. So yeah, you want an astrologer or a spiritual worker that does go to other people and
Yes.
get that perspective. It's a must.
It is definitely a must. I can say, and I even tell this to people who are, they're just learning. But like, if we just took sun sign, like I describe this to people all the time. If you woke up in the morning and you put on your glasses before you really look at anything, the glasses, the lens through which you're viewing things I kind of tell people to think of their sun sign that way at times, and how you can just know what benefits you can get from someone else's outlook and their lens and their gaze. Like, I know we have affinity for different astrological reasons, but for me, having Scorpio energy to be able to say something to me, for me to take in and digest and really let it affect me, is important to me. I'm a 20-degree Pisces sun, which is in the Scorpio decan and the Scorpio duad, so I'm appreciating that deeper look. Like you said, going deep. Like, we know Scorpio don't play about its deepness, and as we approach Scorpio season, one of the things I think people need to remember is, because Scorpios be getting hate, Christy, I know you see it. People be hating on y'all, and I be mad. They do it, but I tell them all the time, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, Scorpio energy, purest energy in the zodiac. I'm going to tell you why. You need to know, it needs to know, what am I dealing with? I don't really want to deal with whether it's a good or a bad thing immediately. I need to know what's at the heart of this. What is true, what my investigation will find, what is actually at the core of shit, what people hide. Like, I need to be able to see down into all of that. Without that purity, you can't purge. Without that ability.
Yeah, and that's that reminds me, I wrote a story of Venus and Libra journeying and becoming Venus and Scorpio. And kind of in that same way, you're like, I want to see beyond the facade. And Libra's known for the facade.
Oh, right? Yeah, so superficial.
So, hi, Libras. But if you think about it that way, where Libra's facade gets yanked, it gets taken off, and it's stripped. Libra's stripped. Well, that's Scorpio. When you get to Scorpio, you are stripped. You are getting an X-ray. Nothing will get through. Like, Scorpio energy dissects you, gets you naked, gets you ready for some good deep fun.
It legitimately does. In every way we can talk about that, sexually, psychologically, like, it really does. I'm so glad that you said that, because, and I'm also glad that you said, about the transition from going to like Venus and Libra to Venus and Scorpio. Listen, I tell people all the time, the zodiac wheel is telling a story, and in order for you to be able to have the benefits, I mean, it shows how every energy is needed, right? So, like, for us to really appreciate Libra energy, it has to evolve enough to get to Scorpio. Then when you're in Scorpio and you've had that X-ray, as you said, really peered down into the deeps and the depths of everything, that's how you're able to handle Sagittarius energy, seeking and searching its truth, teaching. Like, you can't skip steps.
No. And a lot of people try to do that. Like, they come into spirituality and they think, okay, I'm enlightened, this is it. It's like, just started. Welcome to the endless rabbit hole.
Yes, because it's going to keep going back around. Because as soon as we get to Pisces season, Aries season is coming again, and then here we keep going. That's poignant to say, because I do think, please, people who are going through this directly, don't hate me for saying it.
Yeah.
It's just an observation. But I really do think that when people become spiritually awakened, or they acknowledge, oh my gosh, there's a journey or a path that I'm on, there's an obsession with, oh, I just want to be enlightened and awake. Like, oh my gosh, how do I reach that nirvana? And how do I stay there? Because once I get to that, God forbid, I deal with any of the earthly things. And it's like, I don't subscribe to that, personally.
Me either. And that, it's so funny because I'm Scorpio, but you're Pisces. And you are the last sign. That's enlightenment right there. That's literally the complete cycle of that evolution. And it's like as you were speaking, I saw these new people at the starting line in Aries. A little do they know, they're trying to go the wrong way to the end of Pisces. They're going the wrong way on the purpose. So they got to go through the Aries fire.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
No skipping steps in these cycles. You're absolutely right.
Pisces, because they're seeing what is capable. They're seeing through that veil. They're seeing like, holy shit, there's more. And that's what happens. They see this huge Pisces vision that is just unfathomable. Like, Pisces represents that part of the universe that a human will never get to go to.
Oh, yeah.
Ever. You can't, like, there's no matter how many millions of years, let's say we live a million, billion years ahead, we're not going there. And that's, yeah, so they see that. They see the grandness of the possibility. And little do they know, no, well, to get to there, you got to do the whole thing. So,
yes, it's a whole journey. It's a whole wheel. That's absolutely right. And I love the way you put it. I didn't think about that before. I mean, I hear people say Aries is the baby of the zodiac. It comes running out the gate. It wants to get things done. It's cardinal fire. Are you ready for that enlightenment that you're rushing to? Or are you not realizing that after you have awareness of who you are, then we're moving into Taurus energy? This is practical energy. What do we have now? Like, are we aware of this? It's our value systems. Like, we can't skip those steps. And I feel bad because I get a lot of people that ask me questions. It's like, oh, you're spiritual, so like, how do I get there? And I'm like, where's there? Where's it you're trying to go?
Right.
Like,
and how much are you willing to sacrifice?
Because this ain't pretty.
No, this is not pretty.
Not pretty at all.
Because you have to die, and take it from a Scorpio, you have to die many times in that cycle, in that journey. And it's just stripping these old layers, metaphysical, physical even, when everything. That nakedness that I spoke about from Libra. Like, well, when you reach the Scorpio, yeah, that's that moment.
Have fun. I don't understand what the obsession is in a lot of cases for some people with wanting to avoid the shadow, which we could never really do fully in Scorpio energy. Like, can you imagine what it would feel like to fight your own need to know, to understand, to die and be reborn again through this understanding? Like, I can't even fathom. It just does not compute. Like, does not compute.
And even being on the path and having experienced that, when we want to tell people what it is, what it really is, there's again no words. And that's where the language of energy shines brightest.
Yes.
There's no English word to best describe it. And so that's where meditation comes in and connecting to nature, just plugging off of this,
Yes.
the chaos.
The chaos has to, you need a vacation from it. But we're not going to ignore the undercurrents, no matter how rough they're churning. And just, you know, with some of the energy that we're under now, I've seen more people speak about, not that it doesn't get discussed, but more people who are not inclined to speak about astrological phenomenon or cycles, talking about how terrible this Mercury retrograde was for them, or how they noticed more people actually ascribing the difficulties to what was going on with Mercury. And it's like, I love that people have this interest. Now, can we kind of pick apart some of these things? Because even with this full moon, which, you know, people are going to have their rituals and they're going to do their things, and I'm not one of those people that wants to tell people what they should be doing, so to speak.
Right.
I feel like once you resonate enough with what is occurring and the energies that are happening, you can dig inside pretty deep and figure out what you need to do.
Yeah.
But relationship-oriented Libra, of course, this was going to have to deal with our interactions with other people, specifically when it comes to how we deal with people one-on-one. Or, you know, I was talking to someone about the agreements that we make. There was a lot that came up for people that was wrapping up some of that. And they're like, oh God, this is terrible, but the universe provided this cycle for us. Why? Well, we need it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm at a point in my journey when I see these negative Nancy's, and I'm going to call that out. All these people like, oh, it's the worst. And then the next week they pick something else and it's the worst and the worst. And they never get out of that. Every week, every time they post something, now is the moment. Now it's like,
yes, ma'am.
Shut up. Like, this ain't it. And so, yes, every cycle, every aspect, every transit is gonna have its good and bad. And again, there's some good that comes out of it, and like you said, the universe gives this to you because, hey, that's what it is for you, for your highest good.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure people hear that all the time. Your highest good. Well, to get there, like we're saying, you got to do the work. But when you're put in these situations and you actually, something's got to go usually. That's what I
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Something's just got to be adjusted and moved out. And the universe asks us, are you willing to make the sacrifice? Are you willing to make the sacrifice?
Yes.
And what happens is these people are fighting that. They don't want that to happen. And that's where you hear these negative things like, oh my God, I'm still stuck. I'm like, dude, you gotta be crazy. You literally have to be crazy and go against some like norms and do something different. They say you do, you know, oh God, I'm horrible with quotes. So the one where they're like, if you do the same thing over and over again, you're crazy.
Okay. Yes,
like,
the definition of insanity.
That one. Yeah, that's fucking true.
It is.
Something's got to give. Something's got to change. And so a lot of people deny that moment or don't take it and just stick to it. And you got those outcomes that are like, not the best.
Yeah, it's just kind of sad that we don't oftentimes use energies to our benefit. Like, for instance, we talk about Mercury retrograde, bringing people back around, situations that have not quite completed themselves, so to speak. And, you know, everyone's, I got to deal with this. I got to deal with, why is this guy talking to me? And it's like, I have changed up how I view these things and this phenomenon. There's a lesson for me to learn in everything. Seriously. So if there's a cycle that's going on, sometimes maybe the universe is trying to get you to wrap one up, getting you to recognize one. You know, I've responded a lot differently this Mercury retrograde to people popping back up than I have in previous iterations of this. And I'm proud of myself. You know what I mean? Like, so instead of like being like, this is terrible, this is the worst. No, you can actually, if you look for the lesson, it's usually there. And, you know, we talk about, you know, how full moons are culminations, etc. I was asking people to look back to the new moon in Aries this year to kind of get an idea in the short term. What is culminating? You know, what has actually come up? You know, we have Chiron in Aries too, which is definitely people having to take responsibility for their healing. You stepping up for yourself. I mean, the entire time Chiron was in Pisces, I felt like the entire world was a sappy, like, whiny, like, there were good parts about it too, but I'm just saying when it came to people having to deal with their wounds, you know, there was more of a woe is me. Now it's like, I feel like this energy calls for you to be like, you know what, this is my responsibility. Your trauma may not be your responsibility in that you didn't directly cause it, but the healing definitely gotta step up with that.
Yes, 1,000%, 1,000%. It's difficult because mental health is such a big topic. Yes. I'm glad it is. But the dark side, the shadow side of the mental health conversation is people just stuck in that victimhood, stuck in those, stuck. And it's so interesting because I'm someone that struggled with mental health, and I've gone through trauma and abuse and all that. And I'm not saying nothing changes and it's all a lie. Hell to the no. No, your brain changes. Like, the way the neurons fire in your head are different, 1,000%. But a lot of people that are going through life, there is a way. Like, I guarantee there's a way. Like, I say I went from 6 feet underground because I tried to kill myself so many times and I'm sorry if I'm
no
right.
Listen,
so,
I will edit appropriately.
Thank you. So, you know, with, you know, saying 6 feet under the ground too, coming on top and finding my light and all of that, and just, there's a freaking way. There is, but it's hard work and it's sacrifice and it's different. It's different, but it takes time, energy, focus, you know, and it's literally every single time your brain gives you a negative thought, you have to say the opposite thing. And literally, like, my trauma, something that I know comes from my trauma comes up. It's like, I gotta start telling myself the opposite, like the right way.
Right.
And it's been years of that. It's now been 7 years since, like, the worst of the worst. And actually, that's 10 years since the worst. But it's been years since that point, and it's been 7 years of having to repeat back and undo what's been done.
Yes.
But not a lot of people are willing to grow that awareness. And I'll share it here. It is. It's so sad, but there's one easy way to start. And this is what I give my clients a lot of times as one of their homeworks, which is 2 weeks. This homework is a 2-week homework. And for the first week, I just need you to look at your brain when you think things. Just be aware of your thought. Just look at it. Don't say anything. Just take notes. Look at how you speak to yourself. Look at how you think when you think about things for 1 week. Well, I'm sure you're going to notice a lot of negative talk. I'm sure you're going to notice a lot of distorted thoughts too, that if you have trauma, you're going to think very askew about it. And so for the second week, you got to start picking those moments. If you find it after you say it or after you think it, right? Don't beat yourself up. Like,
Right.
don't do that. Because it's okay. Like, you're going to let one slip or something's going to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
But start talking back. Start saying, no, that's not how this is.
Right.
Start taking control of your mind. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to come back into this
100%.
body grounded, not aloof, and you know what I was going to say, spiritual.
Yeah.
Not aloof up here. No. The mission is here. This is the purpose. This life is your purpose. Right now, this life, not that.
Yes,
Sorry.
you're saying so much to me that I relate to, because I feel like I could, if I wanted to, just sit here and you know a lot of the things I've been through, I've told you, and I could like sit here and we could just cry, and you could do the same thing, and you could just tell me stuff, and we could both, if we wanted to, develop trauma bonding based on the traumatic things that have happened. Well, I don't necessarily think that there's anything inherently wrong with bonding in some ways over your trauma, but there is something inherently wrong, as far as I'm concerned, with getting stuck there, and especially when you're stuck there with someone else. It's so important that people understand, because I fight with people about this online a lot, and I feel bad because I know people feel attacked. Like, you know, when you're talking from a space of understanding that I've overcome my own victimhood, my own victim mentality. Like, I legitimately have done that. And people will hear you speak about that and then be like, well, your life must have been easy. You haven't gone through the stuff I haven't gone through. What are you talking about? And you're like, okay, I'm not negating anything that happened to you, but I am telling you that there's a very powerful thing that you can go through transformation wise when you start doing the things that you're talking about doing. It is work. No one is saying it's not at all. At all.
And we're gonna mess up, and we do mess up. Even now, I mess up. I'm still screwed up in my own way, you know? But the thing is, I can take ownership of that.
Yes.
And I can be like, okay, yeah. And I'm not afraid, like, I'll mess up, you know? I'll have my crazy moments, my crazy Scorpio girl moment, and, you know, say some real bad shit.
I hear you.
Oops, too deep. But I come back after that, and I make sure I analyze the situation. I go, what caused those words?
Yes.
Right? And I see where those words came from. And then I come back and I go, I'm so sorry. Like, this is why this came. Now, it doesn't excuse what I said.
Exactly.
It doesn't excuse or nullify what the person felt. None of that. But at least I came showing that there's awareness and that I'm taking steps to change that.
Key. That's key.
The best I can do, and I'm so sorry, but from this point forward, I can do this instead.
That's all it really is. I think there's a misconception. People are thinking that if you're asking them to embark on this journey where they're becoming aware of themselves and their trauma and they're actually working through it, that what you're asking them to do is legitimately not what you're asking them to do. We're not asking people to never make a mistake, never be triggered, never fall back into old patterns of behavior. It starts with awareness. Like, it legitimately is in the awareness that so much is available to people to be able to grasp that healing and to start, you know, those neurons firing off differently, because patterns and stuff, I mean, this stuff is ingrained after a while into you, especially if you've had really traumatic experiences. We're never trying to take away and tell a person that their experiences don't matter, they weren't important, or they weren't impactful or hurtful or whatever they are. It's just we know that there's so much power on the other end. They just have to grasp it. That's the most important step. That's the step where I congratulate people the most, because then they can start doing the work, as you said.
Yes. And I see that a lot with my new clients. You know, I have several clients that I got them. I was their first reading, and now it's been a few years, and the growth is great. You know, because they faced everything head on and went through the hard stuff and broke those bonds that held them back. So, absolutely. Also, I just want to say, if anyone has any mental health issues, what saved my life was going to a psychologist. Yes. So I highly recommend people to find somebody that they can speak to no matter what, because yes. That's the only way. And there are psychologists out there that are spirit-centered, just know that. But kind of like what we've been saying here, be careful. Some of them are off the deep end. And then there's grounded ones like mine.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, but like highly recommend a mental health professional.
I do too. I'm not one of those people that's like, well, you're spiritual. Why would you need to go to? Listen, are you not down here having a human experience? Psychology is first of all, it's been of deep interest to me forever, and it makes sense. I want to know why people do the things they do, and it doesn't even matter how off the chain the behavior is. That's why I like serial killer documentaries and things that are really off the beaten path, so to speak. Yeah. But there's no harm in needing assistance with being able to navigate the waters of your life. And that can come from a lot of different places. Just because you have an astrologer don't mean that you don't need to go talk to a therapist. Just because you have a therapist don't mean you don't need an astrologer. Or wherever you're drawn to in your healing process, there are multiple people that can usually help on that journey. That's it.
Absolutely. And it's so funny, just to show you how funny the universe is. 10 years ago, I started my mental health journey, and I found my psychologist that I still see to this day. But I was agnostic back then. So she was just seeing me straight psychologist to client, nothing fluffy, nothing extra, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I found, I grew up with astrology, but, you know, the journey was fun. I got back to it in 2014, and I saw her after I figured astrology out and tarot, and I'm like, oh my God, I do astrology now, and da-da-da-da. She's like, I realized the crystals in her office and the tarot card decks are behind me. I was like, she's like, yeah, I've done this the whole time, but you said you were agnostic, that I've never showed this to you.
She respected you completely. That is a beautiful thing, because, I mean, I have heard some stories from people about not feeling much connection when they go into therapy.
It's so true. It's bad. I feel so bad for people.
I do too, because when I first went to therapy, ooh, this is what actually spawned my spiritual, like, awakening. At the, like, very end of 2011, going to therapy, and my therapist saying, do you have a belief system? And I start cracking up laughing, and I'm like, absolutely not. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, what make you say that? Like, and I'm like, well, I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school from 7th to 12th grade. None of that ever resonated with me. And my mother used to take us to different churches so that we could experience different, types of faiths that weren't necessarily, Catholicism. Mm-hmm. And I would be like, there's people like catching the Holy Spirit and all this stuff. And I'm like, what? First I'm like, this is the Pisces, blame yourself. What's wrong with me? Because I'm not feeling what I'm not falling out and catching it. And then after a while, I'm like, none of this is something about this feels off. That was always my thought. And to have her like ask me about that, if I wouldn't have gone to this woman, then the thing that happened next would have never happened, and we wouldn't be talking right now. She said to me, I don't want to be pushy. She said, but I have something I think may appeal to you. She was like, you seem open-minded. She was like, I'm going to give it to you. You don't have to give it back. It was a set of audiobooks. on, CDs. And she's like, just, give it a listen, let me know what you think. And some people think this is woo-woo, but it was the audiobook for Asking It Is Given, with Abraham being channeled. And I went home and I listened to it, and at first I was kind of like, so this lady just be catching voices from a collective? What? Like, I was like, all right, lady, you crazy. And that's what I'm thinking in my head. But then I felt bad. Then I'm like, well, maybe she's not. Like, there's so many possibilities. But it wasn't just the fact that this was being channeled. It was what was being said. And I was listening to what was being said and what they were talking about as far as being like in the vertex. So, for instance, to give you an example, remember you said the conversation needs to change as far as, what you're having with yourself. Yeah. I learned that there's a big difference. Let's say you're in a relationship you don't want to be in, like you're miserable. Anytime your partner does something, you're on your way out in your head anyway, right? You're just, why can't he ever, da-da-da-da-da. Instead, the very same thing, but the flip side to that is to say, my next partner will pay attention to me. My next partner will honor my wishes. You're speaking about what you want versus what you don't. And I know that sounds like very cliche to people, but it completely changed my life. And my relationship with my therapist became one that was deeply, deeply profound for me. Like, that connection wouldn't have happened if she was trying to assess me real quick to see what I would be ready for. I could have came back and been like, yeah, I didn't like that too much. And she's the sort of person who would have respected that. But
that's a good therapist right there.
I'm just like, oh my God. Like, that's what started me actually looking deeper. Like, I had always kind of had an interest in astrology, but that's when I was like, okay, I got all these astrology books. Well, actually read them. Started learning about esoteric things, got really deep in trying to understand hermetics and laws of the universe and different and it's just like, then it made sense why my entire life none of the religion really stuck with me or resonated. Why I was always like, what?
I love that. I love that. The universe and nothing less. It's funny because your Pisces is associated to religion, as is Sagittarius, which I have a Sagittarius moon. And it's so funny because I also grew Catholic, but I also was in Cuban witchcraft. And then I denounced all of that. I went full Christian. And then I denounced that and went agnostic. So I did the opposite.
You had a journey,
I got into it. And it's so funny. My journey has taken me back to Yoruba, and I'm in that, and I do my spiritual stuff and my astrology, and my godfather has blessed me in that. He's like, we're not big on that, but there's some good spiritual stories. So I back that up.
I'm happy that with your journey and with your cycle, you've come into what is best for you, what you resonate with most, because it would be a terrible shame, especially having had you read me, it would have been a terrible shame for you to never have really explored that path. Like, I wouldn't have had the impact that I have knowing you, nor would anybody who has had the honor to. You know what I mean? So when I think about that, just like the little small things that have happened, and I'm like, my therapist is the one that literally put me on a path to look, towards these sorts of things that one would deem spiritual. It's beautiful.
In a grounded way that doesn't have you losing reality or losing connection to your life and your stability. Oh my God, you can do it both ways, guys.
It's there. It exists. There's no reason for anyone to feel like they have to throw away, certain things just because you're on a spiritual path. I mean, the way that psychology ties into spiritual and astrological and other divination system concepts too is interesting. Like, I enjoy tying things together. I mean, and seeing where there's intersections, but I need people not to be scared to just, you know, get the help that you need. There's no shame in needing help. None.
Double whammy right there.
Yeah, none.
There's none. And I know way too many people that are like, I will never say this about what I experienced. I will never look at that. And they end up in places that just destroy them and their life. And it's sad. And it's sad because the moment you open up and become vulnerable and put your truth out, the good and the bad, the happy and the sad, it's gonna bring, so you're making space for healing. You're making space for good new things. It's beautiful. It's worth it. 10 out of 10. We'll do again next lifetime. It just, you know, it's not the end. Not the end.
Not at all. I don't know if I would have said the same thing maybe 10 years ago even, but I do recognize that every step in the journey, including all the things that almost like completely like ruined me, like where I just was going to lay down and give up, I wouldn't be the person that I am today without all those different people to help me in all the different ways that they did, from a psychological perspective, an astrological perspective. There's so many different people that I owe a debt of gratitude to, just because I literally know those patterns have changed because I'm a different person. I don't respond and react the same way to everything. I'm not perfect, God knows, but you know, you see the difference and you can see the change and appreciate it. So when people get upset when they haven't gone through that cycle yet, so it seems impossible, and they just feel like you're being a holier than thou, oh well, I got my stuff together, how come you couldn't get your stuff together type person. And it's like, no, that's not the spirit from which we speak. That's not my motivation for wanting people to come out of victim mentality. Like, I had to do it myself. I even think of my old language. You know what you used to say. Who knows better than you what you used to say?
Oh yeah, girl. To myself and others.
Yes. Yes. I tell this story all the time of when I first started looking into astrology and I saw my chart, right? And I'm like, okay, so I knew I was a Pisces. All right, we got that. Capricorn moon. What? All this Virgo energy? Like, for me, that was the absolute worst until I realized, because I was equating those energies with people of those sun signs that I knew and being like, ew, like, why would I ever be like them? But what it did was, it was like putting a mirror up. I'm a Virgo dominant chart holder, okay? And I used to complain about Virgos all the time. And I used to be like, why are y'all that? And then I started to see where I was that way too. Or aspects of Virgo energy that were operating through me in response to them. Or like just all the different ways that you could see stuff. So I think that astrology gave me a way to qualify and quantify a lot of that. But going to therapy actually gave me methods and practices for recognizing my behavior that not only just helps me, but helps my clients now too. So I wouldn't have this if I wasn't open.
You can't lose.
No.
There's no loss in that. You
we
only gain.
don't be losing.
No. I have a question, kind of.
Sure.
You said that when you got your chart. So, did you get your chart first and then went into astrology? Or were you into astrology and found your birth time and then did you?
So what I did was, the first book that I had was the only astrology book you will ever need, right?
Oh.
And so I'm reading it. I had heard everybody had a birth chart, but again, my Virgo dominance, and I also so I have a T-square. My 6th house sun is opposed by my 12th house Saturn, and that squares my 3rd house Neptune, right? For me, my experience with things is when I get interested in them, sometimes I don't know why. Like, there's no rhyme or reason really to it. I'll collect what I need for it and then go back to it, I guess, when I have the time. So I go to this book, and I'm like, oh, I don't even need to look at my birth chart yet. I need to understand all the energies. Let me make sure that I understand every sign. Let me make sure that I understand how this even is what it is. Because, you know, to me, I kind of tried to debunk astrology a little bit too. But what I
said that in the podcast, the last
yes,
podcast.
I really I definitely was, because to me, I'm skeptical about a lot of things. But when I was starting to see, because to me it just sounded like somebody somewhere just made up some stories and told people this. No, you can see the connectedness. And at the same time, I was watching videos by Santos Bonacci where he talks about, you know, syncretism and how he wraps everything into astrology. And I was like, okay, now I'm ready to learn how to do this chart thing, right? So then I pulled my chart up and I'm like, I still, even after knowing all the energies and learning all that, I still was like, ew. And then I remember somebody saying, well, you picked your chart. You picked when you were going to incarnate. So I'm like, this is the shit I picked? Like, seriously? This is what I picked?
Oh, that's funny.
And then, you know, learning and getting more comfortable with charts, actually drawing them by hand, like getting more, like, that's when everything, like, changed. So I learned about the essences of the signs and their rulers and what this meant and how they got that and everything. And then I was like, okay, now I need to do this chart thing. So that's, yeah.
All right. That's
I didn't
great.
dig into the chart until after I was just learning, like, astrology. I didn't want to know what my moon sign or anything was until I understood the essence of every energy. And I'm glad I thought like that, because I know we all get into astrology, want to know our energy. But my thing is, even with my clients, I tend to teach them some astrology, because it's not just about understanding you, even though that's important. Understanding these energies means you recognize them everywhere in everything you see. You'll even pick up on your interactions with someone else and sit there and kind of guess what could possibly be going on with their energies against yours. So what does that mean? I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't went in the way I did.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny because I asked, because I kind of related to how you said when you saw your chart, right? And what happened to me is, well, I grew up in the spiritual realm, and as a teenager, I grew up watching Walter Mercado.
Okay.
And I mean, he is the reason why I'm in astrology.
I hear you. That documentary on him was amazing.
I cried.
Yeah.
Talking about it, because thank God. Well, kind of like a therapist for you. Like, thank God for him and putting himself out there in times that we're not accepting, and he just put himself out there. And
definitely.
That's it. And I'm actually getting emotional. Sorry.
No. You're in the right space to get emotional.
So what ended up happening is I saw him, but of course that's just sun sign.
Yeah.
That's not the depth. And as a teenager, I would always go to a website and read my horoscope, and I'm like, this is not it. Like, there's more. There's more. So as a teenager, I remember going to my school library and checking out astrology books and going home and reading them. And then I also had my computer, and I remember clear as day, I found a website that made free birth chart reports. And I asked my mom and my stepdad what their birth time was. I'm sure they didn't give me the right one. I put my birthday. I didn't know my birth time because I'm actually adopted.
Okay.
So I had no one to reference for that. But I remember printing out their charts and be like this and this and this like, as a teenager. But fast forward to being an adult and realizing, yeah, the birth chart is really important. The birth time is really important. I had to order mine from the state. And I had to order like the original certificate photocopy because that's the one that has the time. If you just order a regular copy, you won't get your time. So I asked my biological father that I got in contact with as an adult, and he said I was born at 3 a.m. I'm like, all right, 3 a.m. Ooh, Virgo rising, Scorpio in the 4th, all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. All right, cool. And then my birth certificate actually arrives. And when I saw my moon in the 8th house and Sagittarius and, you know, Taurus rising and all the Scorpio, I was like, in the 6th, I'm like, oh, this changes everything.
Right.
Oh my gosh, it moves in the 8th, but like you said, that makes sense in my life because my mom died when I was a baby. So moon is mother, 8th house is death. Yeah. There you go. So it's so incredible to see your chart at that moment, but I think we all do the same thing and revert to that negative mentality that society and pop astrology has put into us.
Yeah, it's true because it's so difficult. Like, I don't want to hate on the fact that I see astrology everywhere, but like there's that part of me that's like, I see something about sun signs, I'm looking at TikToks. Matter of fact, I'm going to have something. I want you to look at it and tell me what you think about it. That came from TikTok. That happens to be involving Scorpio energy too. So, but I want you to look at that for the reason, of course, that like I value your opinion, but it kind of falls in lockstep with what we're talking about because, you know, you realize there was something past sun sign, and I know everybody isn't necessarily on the same level and looking at the same things at the same time, because I'm sure there's people that are like, probably think by the time I figured out how to read and understand charts, they're like, I've been doing that for 20 years. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I get it. Everybody's not going to come into the same thing at the same time. But damn, what a disservice I'd have been doing to myself if I was just like, okay, no, I'm just fine with sun signs. I didn't even realize for the longest time when I was first reading these books, because I wasn't putting things together in my head, that there's literally a chart for everything.
Isn't that crazy that we had already been exposed to deeper levels of it, and for some fucking reason our brain did not compute? And I asked myself, I go, universe, you really didn't want me to know the whole thing then, despite me looking. That's crazy. That's fucking nuts.
It was like due time.
I was on websites. I was pulling birth charts. I still didn't know what it meant until I was 27.
Aww.
You know, it's so incredible. It's always been with us, even if we're not aware.
Yes, and I tell people all the time. I wrote a Twitter post the other day. I'll put it up to show people what I was talking about too, and I'll share it with you as well. Where, listen, astrology changed my life. I felt like as I learned more, once I was actually like zoomed in on it, I felt like I was remembering something. Like some things would just come to me and then I would read and I would be like, well, I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew it. Like, how did I know this? This feels familiar. It feels like something I'm supposed to be drawn to. And I always kind of was. And then had access, like you said, to the deeper shit, and then it wasn't time for it yet. It wasn't time. But the fact that it happened, well, priceless. Stay tuned for continued conversation with Christy from Transmuting Butterfly as we're joined by astrologer Marie Rousseau. You don't want to miss it.